Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone and thought you understood their entire story only to discover you were completely wrong? If you believe first impressions can be dangerously misleading, I want you to stay with me. And as you listen, tell me in the comments, have you ever fallen for someone you never expected to love? Because this story begins with a mistake. Adrian Vale did not believe in love. He believed in leverage. From the glass walls of his penthouse overlooking Manhattan, the city looked small like a chessboard he owned. At 38, Adrian was the youngest billionaire CEO on the Forbes list, head of Vale Industries, a tech conglomerate built on ruthless acquisitions and strategic brilliance. He adjusted his cufflinks while staring at his reflection. Perfect suit, perfect posture, empty eyes. 3 weeks ago, his fiancée left him, not for another man, but for emotional oxygen. "You don't feel," she had said quietly. "You calculate." He hadn't argued, because she wasn't wrong. Downstairs, on the marble floors of that same penthouse, Lyra Bennett knelt with a polishing cloth. She moved with quiet efficiency, dark hair pulled into a low bun, her expression composed but observant. She had worked in the Vale estate for 8 months. Adrian barely knew her name. He knew the other staff, the loud ones, the dramatic ones. But Lyra? She was almost invisible. Almost. She noticed everything. The unsigned contracts left carelessly on the counter. The whiskey glass that stayed full longer each night. The way Adrian stood alone at the window, like someone waiting for a storm. That evening, he was angry. A major acquisition had stalled. Investors were nervous. Headlines speculated about instability after his broken engagement. He poured another drink, sat at the long glass table, picked up a document without fully reading it. Lyra stepped forward. "Sir." He didn't look up. "What?" "That clause on page 4, it transfers controlling shares." He froze. Silence thickened. Slowly, he flipped to page 4. Her voice had not trembled. He looked at her for the first time, really looked. "You read legal structures?" he asked. "I read what's placed in front of me." Her tone wasn't defensive. It was factual. His jaw tightened. "That's not your job." "No," she agreed softly. "But it would have been your loss." There was not arrogance. Not fear. Confidence. He dismissed her with a wave, but he didn't miss the detail. And for the first time, Adrian Vale noticed his maid. Upstairs in her small staff quarters, Lyra closed the door quietly and exhaled. Step 1 had gone exactly as planned. But she hadn't expected his eyes to look that tired, or that human. And somewhere between strategy and silence, something shifted. Their worlds were about to collide, and neither of them knew that this billionaire and Maid story was about to become something far more dangerous and far more personal. 3 days later, Adrian Vale's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Vale Industries in crisis. Is the billionaire losing control? Fiancé speaks out about emotional neglect. Adrian stood in the boardroom while executives argued over damage control. Screens flashed numbers in red. Stock prices dipped like a heartbeat faltering under pressure. He didn't flinch, but when the meeting ended, he stayed seated long after everyone left. For the first time in years, he felt cornered. That night, the penthouse was quieter than usual. No assistants, no advisors, just silence and the faint sound of dishes being washed in the kitchen. "Lyra." He walked in without announcing himself. She stood at the counter, sleeves rolled slightly above her wrists, hands submerged in warm water. The scent of citrus soap filled the air. "You knew about that clause," he said flatly. She didn't turn. "Yes." "How?" She dried her hands slowly before facing him. "I pay attention." He studied her again, this time searching. Her posture was too composed. Her speech too deliberate. "You don't belong in housekeeping," he said. A small pause. "Where do I belong, Mr. Vale?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he did something reckless. "I need a wife." The words hung between them, sharp, metallic. She blinked once. "Excuse me." "Not a romance," he clarified quickly. "A solution. The board needs stability. The media needs a narrative shift. Marriage changes headlines." Her expression didn't change. "You want a public distraction. I want loyalty." She stepped closer now, not intimidated. "And you believe you can buy it?" "I believe in contracts," he replied evenly. The air thickened. He expected outrage. Maybe fear. Instead, Lyra asked quietly, "Why me?" And there it was, the real question. Because she wasn't impressed by him. Because she wasn't chasing him. because she had already proven she couldn't be manipulated easily. "You have nothing to gain from destroying me," he said. Her eyes held his. "Are you sure about that?" Something flickered across his face, suspicion, perhaps, but pride overpowered instinct. "I'll ensure you're financially secure for life," he continued. "Separate bedrooms. Public appearances only. 2 years. After that, we part cleanly." Silence. Outside, the city glowed like a restless ocean of light. She studied him for a long moment. "You don't believe in love, do you?" she asked softly. "I believe in outcomes." A faint smile touched her lips, but it wasn't amused. It was knowing. "And if I say no? You won't." The arrogance. The certainty. The challenge. Lyra walked past him toward the window, looked out at the empire he thought he controlled. This was closer than she expected, faster than she planned. But sometimes destiny moves when ego pushes. She turned back toward him. "I'll marry you." No hesitation. No negotiation. Adrian nodded once, as if sealing a deal. But as she walked away, he didn't notice the subtle tremor in her breath. And he certainly didn't see the message she sent from her private phone minutes later. Phase 2 begins. "Let me ask you something right here. If someone proposed marriage to you as a business strategy, would you say yes? Be honest. Would you walk away or step into the fire?" Because neither of them understood yet. This wasn't going to stay business for long. The wedding lasted 12 minutes. No orchestra, no family, no vows written from the heart. Just a private officiant in Adrian's penthouse library, floor-to-ceiling books watching like silent witnesses. Adrian stood in a tailored black suit, composed as always. Lyra wore a simple ivory dress, elegant, understated, deliberate. "Do you, Adrian Vale, take?" "Yes." No hesitation. Lyra looked at him when her turn came. Her voice didn't shake. "I do." And just like that, the billionaire CEO married his maid. By morning, the world exploded. Billionaire marries housekeeper. Rebound or redemption? From mop to millions. Adrian watched the news coverage from his office, jaw tight. The narrative was shifting just as he predicted. Investors stabilized. Stock prices ticked upward. Crisis managed. He returned home that evening to find Lyra standing in the living room, scrolling calmly through the same headlines. "They think I trapped you," she said lightly. "They think a lot of things," Adrian replied. She set the phone down. "Does it bother you?" "No." But his voice carried an edge. He walked past her toward the bar. "Separate bedrooms," he reminded her. "We maintain boundaries." "Of course," she answered smoothly. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Because living in proximity does something dangerous. It reveals cracks. Over the next few days, Adrian began noticing things he hadn't before. Lyra didn't behave like someone overwhelmed by wealth. She navigated formal dinners effortlessly. She corrected a guest's misquoted economic statistic without blinking. She handled media questions with poised, calculated restraint. Too poised. One night after a corporate gala, he loosened his tie while she removed her earrings in front of the mirror. "You weren't nervous," he said. "About the press." She met his eyes in the reflection. "Should I have been? You've never done this before." She held his gaze just long enough. "You'd be surprised what I've done before." There it was again, that subtle undercurrent. Mystery. He turned away first. Resistance wasn't loud. It was quiet and simmering. He told himself she was convenient, strategic, temporary. But then small moments betrayed him. The way she left a cup of tea outside his office when meetings ran late. The way she listened when he vented about board pressure, not interrupting, not pitying. The way silence between them didn't feel empty. One evening, he found her in the library reading a financial journal. Not casually flipping pages. Studying. He stepped inside. "That's advanced market analysis." She closed it gently. "It's interesting. For a maid." The words slipped out colder than he intended. Her eyes darkened slightly. For anyone who enjoys understanding power. The temperature in the room shifted. He crossed his arms. "Who are you, Lyra?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Your wife." Nothing more. Nothing less. But Adrian felt it now beneath the contract, beneath the arrangement. Something was unfolding that he couldn't quantify. And for a man who built his empire on control, that was the most dangerous thing of all. 2 weeks into their marriage, Vale Industries hosted its annual shareholder retreat in Aspen. 3 days. One luxury mountain lodge. Dozens of board members watching their every interaction. Image mattered. and optics required unity. When the reservations were finalized, Adrian's assistant cleared her throat nervously. There was a scheduling error, she said. The lodge is overbooked. Only one executive suite remains available. Adrian didn't react immediately. Lyra did. That won't be a problem, she said calmly. He glanced at her. It absolutely would be. The suite overlooked snow-covered mountains. A fireplace crackled softly. One king-sized bed dominated the center of the room like a silent dare. Adrian set his luggage down deliberately. I'll take the couch. Lyra removed her coat. You don't have to perform for me. I'm not performing. She turned to face him fully. Then why do you look more nervous about sharing a room than about losing half your company? That struck something. He exhaled sharply. This arrangement works because there are lines. And you're afraid they'll blur? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the window, staring at the white expanse outside. Snow fell in slow, quiet surrender. After a long silence, she spoke again, softer now. Why did she really leave? He didn't move. She said I was incapable of intimacy, he replied flatly. Was she wrong? The fire cracked behind them. He turned slowly. Intimacy requires trust. And you don't trust anyone? He held her gaze. Do you? That landed between them heavy, loaded. For a moment, the mask slipped. Lyra stepped closer, but not provocatively. Just close enough to lower her voice. You think love makes you weak, she said. I think it makes people reckless. Her expression shifted, something almost sad flickered there. Maybe you've only seen the wrong kind. Silence again. Not empty. Not cold. Charged. That night, they lay on opposite sides of the bed, fully clothed, inches apart, but miles emotionally. Neither slept. Around 2 a.m., Adrian spoke into the darkness. You don't act like someone who grew up without power. Her breath hitched slightly, almost imperceptible. Power isn't always visible, she answered. He rolled onto his side. And what kind of power do you have, Lyra? The pause lasted too long. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. He watched her silhouette in the faint moonlight. For the first time since the wedding, something unfamiliar crept into his chest. Not suspicion, not control, curiosity, and beneath it, attraction. Because proximity does what distance never can. It reveals warmth. It reveals vulnerability. And it reveals desire. Let me pause here and ask you something. When two people pretend their relationship isn't real, do you think that makes it safer or more dangerous? Because in that quiet mountain suite, something unspoken began to grow, and neither of them was prepared for how fast it would catch fire. The discovery happened by accident. Or at least, that's what Adrian told himself. They had returned from Aspen 2 days earlier. The retreat had been a success. Investors were reassured. The media cycle was cooling. But something about Lyra's composure lingered in his mind. That night, she was out claiming she had errands. Adrian rarely entered her private quarters. Boundaries, he reminded himself. But curiosity is a quiet predator. He knocked once. No answer. The door was slightly ajar. He stepped inside. The room was simple, neatly made bed, folded uniform, minimal decor. But on the small desk sat a leather portfolio. Unlocked. He told himself he was looking for reassurance. Instead, he found war. Inside were corporate documents, shareholder certificates, legal filings, and at the top of the stack, Bennett Holdings, 31% ownership stake in Vale Industries. His pulse slowed instead of racing. 31%. That was more than any current board member. More than him personally. He flipped another page. Original founding documents. 2 names. Charles Vale, Henry Bennett, Adrian's father, and Lyra Bennett. His throat tightened. The air in the room felt thinner. He read faster now. Internal memos from 20 years ago. A sudden removal of Henry Bennett from executive authority. A fatal car accident 6 months later. No formal investigation. Just silence. The pieces aligned like a blade sliding into place. Lyra wasn't just his maid. She was the daughter of the man who co-founded his empire. The daughter of the man quietly erased from it. The uniform, the proximity, the marriage. This wasn't coincidence. The door opened behind him. He didn't turn immediately. I wondered how long it would take, Lyra said calmly. Her voice didn't tremble. Adrian closed the folder slowly. You own 31% of my company. Our company, she corrected. He turned then. Her eyes weren't soft anymore. They were steel. You came into my home under false pretenses, he said. You invited me, she replied evenly. You manipulated me. You underestimated me. The tension in the room vibrated. My father built Vale Industries with yours, she continued. And then he was forced out. Discredited. Destroyed. Adrian's jaw tightened. My father wouldn't. Your father protected the board, she said sharply. Not the truth. Silence. 1,000 questions pressed against his ribs. Why marry me? He asked quietly. She stepped closer now, no uniform, no disguise. Because I needed access. There it was. Raw. Brutal. But I also needed to know something, she added, her voice lowering. What? Whether you were him. The words cut deeper than accusation. Adrian felt something fracture inside, not anger. Something heavier. You could have destroyed me publicly, he said. Yes. Why didn't you? For the first time since entering the room. She hesitated. Because somewhere between strategy and proximity, between contract and conversation, the lines had blurred. And now the truth stood between them like a loaded weapon. Neither of them knew yet. Pulling the trigger would cost more than either expected. The silence after the confession didn't explode. It settled. Heavy. Thick. Unavoidable. Adrian stood still, the folder hanging loosely at his side. You married me to investigate me, he said finally. Yes. And you planned to expose the company? If I had found proof of corruption, yes. The honesty was brutal, but it wasn't cruel. He studied her face, searching for triumph. There was none. Only conflict. Did you find anything? He asked quietly. She held his gaze. No. That answer hit harder than accusation. He swallowed. You thought I was capable of ruining your father. I thought you were raised by a man who did. The distinction mattered. He stepped closer now, not aggressive, just human. My father died believing he protected this company from collapse, Adrian said. I was 19. I inherited debt, lawsuits, and a board that didn't trust me. Her eyes flickered. He never told you what happened with my father? No. Silence again. Not hostile. Processing. Lyra moved to the edge of the bed and sat down slowly. I was 17 when my father died, she said. They called it an accident. But he had just threatened to expose financial misconduct within the board. Adrian's brow tightened. Misconduct by who? That's what I've been trying to prove. Her voice cracked barely. It was the first fracture he'd seen in her. You think someone else orchestrated it, he said. Yes. And you thought I was part of it. I didn't know. There it was, the truth beneath the strategy. Uncertainty. He sat across from her now, the emotional distance shrinking. You could have confronted me, he said. I didn't trust you. And now? She looked up at him fully. I don't know what to think anymore. The vulnerability in that sentence shifted something fundamental. This wasn't war. It was grief colliding with misunderstanding. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, something he only did when overwhelmed. You don't look at me like a villain, he admitted. Because you don't act like one. Their eyes locked. Not as CEO and infiltrator. Not as billionaire and maid. But as two children who lost fathers to secrets. You should hate me, he said quietly. I tried, she replied. The room felt smaller. Warmer. Dangerous in a different way. If I find proof the board betrayed both our fathers, Adrian said slowly, I'll expose it myself. You'd risk your position? I'd risk more than that. She studied him carefully. Why? He hesitated, pride wrestling with honesty. Because somewhere along the way this stopped being strategic for me. Her breath faltered. Adrian, I don't know when it happened, he continued, voice low. Maybe in Aspen. Maybe the night you stopped me from signing that contract. But I don't see you as leverage anymore. Silence. And then she whispered, that's what scares me. Let me ask you something here. If someone entered your life with hidden motives, but ended up falling for you, would that betrayal outweigh the love? Or would love rewrite the betrayal? Because right now, they were standing at the fragile edge of something real. And real things are harder to walk away from than revenge ever was. It didn't fall apart slowly. It detonated. 2 mornings later, every major news outlet carried the same headline. CEO married to secret majority shareholder. Lyra Bennett. The woman who played the billionaire. Photographs of her father. Old court filings. Speculation about corporate espionage. The leak was precise. Strategic. Devastating. Adrian stared at the television in his office while reporters dissected his marriage like a hostile takeover. Behind him, the boardroom buzzed in chaos. You married a woman who owns 31% of this company without disclosure? One executive barked. You've compromised corporate integrity, another snapped. Adrian didn't defend himself, because the real damage wasn't financial. It was personal. He left the meeting early, drove home himself for once. No driver, no assistant, just anger tightening in his chest. Lyra was in the living room when he entered, her phone face down on the table. She looked calm, too calm. You knew this would come out, he said flatly. Yes. And you didn't warn me? I didn't leak it. But you knew it was possible. She stood slowly. The board is threatened. They're not the only ones. Silence. Sharp. Cutting. He stepped closer, frustration spilling over. Was I ever more than access to you? The question landed like a slap. Her eyes widened not in guilt, in hurt. You think this was easy for me? She asked, voice rising for the first time. Living in your home. Sleeping beside you. Pretending my heart wasn't. She stopped herself. His jaw clenched. Wasn't what? Her silence screamed louder than confession. You investigated me, he continued, bitterness creeping in. You married me under false identity. And now my board believes I was seduced and manipulated. I didn't seduce you. No, he snapped. You just married me. The words were cruel. He knew it. But pride makes men reckless. She took a step back, as if physically struck. I was ready to trust you, she said quietly. I was ready to choose you over revenge. And now, her voice trembled just slightly. Now I don't know if I ever meant anything beyond a liability to you. That hit, harder than any headline. The room felt colder, smaller. He exhaled sharply, pacing once before turning back. Every relationship I've had ended because I wasn't enough emotionally, he muttered. Now I find out my wife had a hidden stake in my empire. I was protecting myself. And who protects me? The vulnerability slipped out before he could stop it. Too late. Silence fell again. But this time it wasn't heavy with tension. It was hollow. She walked toward the door. Where are you going? He demanded. To give you what you want, she said softly. Distance. Lyra. But she didn't stop. The door closed with quiet finality. And in that moment, Adrian Vale realized something terrifying. He wasn't afraid of losing his company. He was afraid of losing her. And for the first time in his controlled, calculated life, he had no idea how to fix it. The penthouse felt wrong without her. Too clean. Too quiet. Adrian stood in the kitchen the next morning staring at a cup of tea he didn't remember making. She used to leave it outside his office when meetings ran late. Small things shouldn't feel like loss. But they did. His phone buzzed nonstop, investors demanding clarity, board members pushing for emergency restructuring. One message stood out. Victor Hargrove Emergency Board Session. 10 a.m. Victor, Senior Board Executive. The only remaining member from his father's era. Adrian's pulse steadied. He drove to headquarters early and accessed archived internal files. The kind no one bothers reviewing unless they're searching for ghosts. Financial audits from 20 years ago. Internal correspondence. Deleted but not erased. And there it was. A private memo from Victor Hargrove recommending Henry Bennett's removal, citing unstable dissent and threat to corporate cohesion. Attached was an insurance adjustment filed weeks before Henry's fatal car accident. Adrian leaned back slowly. It wasn't proof of murder, but it was motive. And motive was enough to ignite scrutiny. He closed his eyes briefly. This was the crossroads. He could protect the board, stabilize the stock, distance himself from Lyra, publicly claim ignorance, and move on. His empire would survive. Or he could burn it down to rebuild it honestly. He thought of her voice in Aspen. Maybe you've only seen the wrong kind of love. He exhaled and picked up his phone. Schedule a press conference, he told his assistant. By noon, every camera in Manhattan was pointed at Vale Industries. Adrian stepped to the podium alone. Reporters shouted questions. Did you know your wife owned 31%? Were you manipulated? Is your marriage a corporate scheme? He adjusted the microphone. And for once, he didn't calculate. I married Lyra Bennett believing she had nothing to gain. He began evenly. The truth is she had more integrity than anyone in this building. Murmurs rippled through the room. I was unaware of her shareholder position. That failure is mine. But what I have learned is that both our fathers were entangled in decisions made by individuals still seated on this board. Victor stiffened in the front row. Adrian continued. I am launching a full independent investigation into past executive actions, including those surrounding Henry Bennett's removal. Gasps. Cameras flashed. And effective immediately, Adrian added, voice firm. I am stepping down as sole acting CEO until the inquiry concludes. Lyra Bennett will assume interim authority beside me. Shock. Pure shock. He didn't look at the board. He didn't look at the investors. He looked straight into the camera. I will not protect power over truth. An hour later, he found her. Not at the penthouse. Not at a hotel. But at the old original Vale warehouse, the first building their fathers ever used. She stood near the faded logo on the brick wall. You saw it, she said without turning. Yes. And I chose you. She finally faced him. Emotion flickered across her expression, hope battling disbelief. You risked everything, she whispered. He stepped closer. No, he corrected gently. I finally risked something that mattered. And now, the final decision wasn't about business. It was about whether she believed him. The old warehouse smelled like dust and memory. Faded brick walls, rusted beams, a ghost of a logo that once read Vale and Bennett before history rewrote it. Lyra stood inches from Adrian, searching his face for calculation. She found none. You stepped down, she said quietly. Yes. You handed me authority publicly. Yes. Why? He didn't hesitate this time. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't want to win. The honesty in that sentence stripped away the last layer between them. You built an empire on control, she said. I built it on fear, he corrected softly. Her brow furrowed. Fear of what? Becoming my father. Silence. He stepped closer, voice steady but raw. I thought power kept me safe. That if I stayed detached, no one could betray me. No one could leave. A faint tremor slipped into his tone. But then you did something reckless. She blinked. What? You saw me. The words settled between them, intimate and undeniable. I didn't marry you for love, he continued. I married you because you felt safe. Because I thought you were invisible to the world. A small, ironic smile touched her lips. I've never been invisible. I know that now. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the original shareholder document bearing both their fathers' names. I want to rebuild this company under both names, he said. Vale and Bennett. Equal. Her breath caught. That won't erase what happened. No, he agreed. But it honors what should have. Emotion finally broke through her composure. You really didn't know? She whispered. I didn't. And you'd still choose this, knowing I came into your life with a mission? He stepped even closer, his voice lowering. You came into my life with armor. I fell in love with the woman underneath it. The word hung in the air. Love. Uncalculated. Uncontracted. Her eyes filled not with weakness, but release. I was supposed to expose you, she admitted. And I was supposed to keep you at a distance. She swallowed. Instead, I fell for me, he finished gently. She gave a small, breathless laugh. Against my better judgment. He lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, warm and certain. No contracts, he said quietly. No leverage. No strategy. Just us, she asked. Just us. For the first time since the wedding that wasn't about love. They kissed like it was. Not desperate. Not dramatic. But earned. 6 months later, the investigation removed Victor Hargrove from the board. Public records cleared both fathers of misconduct. Vale Industries officially rebranded to Vale and Bennett Global. Co-COS. Equal signatures. Equal power. But at night, titles didn't matter. Because love, the kind neither of them believed in, had rewritten everything. Before you go, let me ask you something that matters. Do you think love is stronger when it survives secrets, or when it forces them into the light? Tell me what you believe in the comments. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that unexpected love can find you in the most unlikely places, share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes. The person you underestimate is the one who changes your life forever.